Can we go back to the negotiation process of securing the script with Jennifer? How did that go once you said yes to it?
I think before, and I'm not going to talk money, but I think before you even start this conversation, I think it really is appealing to me that the filmmaker wants to make the movie as much as the screenwriter wants the filmmaker to make the movie. I think it's almost a prerequisite. It's kind of like throughout my 37 years in my own business here, I've always made it a prerequisite to say to whoever I am about to employ that in as much as, I'd love for you to take the job, I would like to tell you that the feelings are mutual, because if you don't want the job, but you'd like the employment, I'm really not interested in you, because it's about growing. And to me, when a filmmaker secures a script and negotiates a deal, I think most of that is predicated on the screenwriter's ability to actually look at it as an investment in themselves. When I was trying to negotiate my current book deal for this book I was trying to buy, I had multiple conversations with the author of the book about my vision, but because of my experience, it also included real reality conversations about the kind of budgets I work in and the commitments that I make. And I'm one of the few people that can sit here and talk to you and say, I do what I say I'm going to do. And Jennifer knew that, she'll only get a fragment of what I have to pay her until production starts. And once production starts, it triggers at least I think it triggers a 50 or 70% advance on what she's supposed to get paid. And typically what ends up happening is most scripts are bought and they're never produced. And I think what was appealing to her is her first movie was going to get was going to get made, and that to her was invaluable. And currently the book that I just tried to buy, it was a situation where the control was removed. And it's incredibly important to me because when you're making independent films, screenwriters saying they're holding out for the big bucks, or screenwriters holding out for a certain director, or as I mentioned before, a screenwriter actually holding out so they can direct it themselves. These are all self-induced obstacles that they're creating for themselves. And I think it all comes down to, I'm going to get a film made. And how many screenwriters, I've got friends that are incredibly successful screenwriters that have never gotten one of their movies produced, but they're writing movies for big, Hollywood movies. And they just never make it to the screen. And to any screenwriter, that's very common. But from a filmmaker's standpoint, I think, the concept of actually taking a screenplay, buying it, and putting it in production is a rare thing, very rare. So that to me is, quote unquote, an enticement.
So then going into production triggered an execution of
Correct.
So then
Correct.
you then...
Well, it no longer becomes an option of a script, it becomes actual, it's in production.
Okay, so then you have your duty to give her the money for that. And then what rights does the screenwriter usually have when it comes to changing anything?
It's all negotiable. In number one, I think every filmmaker that's doing movies like I'm doing, independent films, is really not interested in exploiting the screenwriter.
Oh, right.
So she, in my case, retained rights for a TV series, and she also, has an ability to make sequels and so forth and so on. You have these concepts that are pre-described that make it enticing. But if you do it, and I know Jen well enough now to say she wouldn't be hurt if I said this, it was never about the money. It was about getting your property actually made.
Right. And so was she ever on set with you?
Well, we invited her to the set at the end. In all honesty, no disrespect to her, but there's such an enormous amount of pressure to get a movie made, and especially independent movies. you're working on you're shooting 27, 35 scenes a day. And the last thing I wanted to do was have someone sitting behind me that is questioning the tone or what have you.
Sure, that makes sense.
She trusted me, and when we finally got her kind of positive green light, we let her come more, you know. But it was not personal. It had to do with actually my own insecurities.
Well, I mean, when even doing Film Courage, I wouldn't want someone except David sitting behind me telling me don't ask that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It's different if it's you and I talking about it.
Right.
But I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
Right.
Especially if you have all that money on the line.
Know, the thing is I lucked out on this movie Off the Menu because, number one, I hired 2 leads that were total professionals. They had already had significant amount of success. Danya had a movie called, well, she was on The Sopranos. She was also on Heroes on TV. She's currently on Once Upon a Time. And then you've got Santino Fontana, who essentially was one of the leads in the animation film called Frozen. And he's a lead on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So these guys, I'm not going to tell how to do comedy.
Right.
and as a matter of fact, as a filmmaker, you know, I encourage improvising, and a lot of the stuff that they took, they made better. And I don't have any complaints whatsoever. So I'm very fortunate. And the entire cast of this movie, you can't make independent movies with amateur actors. You just can't do it, because typically what ends up happening is they will cost you, you know, 2-3 times what you expected because you can't get through the day. You know, you're held up. It's not a lie that, you know, in my case, I would always do 2 takes, but in many cases, filmmakers on independent movies only do 1 take. It's the Clint Eastwood model.